Of course. Here's section 1 of your story, written as a tight, focused, emotionally rich script of at least 500 words, aligned with your theme and structure. No repetition, no fluff, only story-driven internal narration and dialogue, ready for a faceless video adaptation. It's strange how silence grows louder over time. I used to love the quiet moments in my house, mornings when the sun poured into the kitchen, the hum of the fridge, the soft creak of the stairs. Now it all just feels hollow. My husband still sits across from me at breakfast, still stirs his coffee 3 times clockwise, still reads the paper even though he could scroll the same stories on his phone. We go through our rituals like sleepwalkers.
Married? Yes. Connected?
I'm not sure we've been that in years. He doesn't look at me the way he used to, doesn't ask how I slept, doesn't notice when I wear something new. He's not cruel. He just isn't there. We speak in to-do lists, grocery items, dentist appointments, who's picking up our son. We function, but that's all. The rest?
Gone.
Our son is 15. Sharp. Observant in that way teenagers can be when you least expect it. He watches everything. One night, I was folding laundry, trying not to think too much, and he just looked at me and said, "You don't smile anymore." I laughed it off, said something about being tired, about work, about adult life being overrated. But he didn't smile back. He just nodded slowly, eyes steady on mine. You should do something that makes you happy, even if it feels wrong. The words stuck to me like wet clothes. I don't think he meant anything specific. He was just trying to be kind. Or maybe he saw something I didn't think I was showing. I started noticing more after that. How my husband's voice changed when he was talking to anyone else. Lighter, less distracted. When he spoke to me, it was clipped, practical, like I was a colleague. I couldn't remember the last time he touched me without needing something. The loneliness didn't come all at once. It crept in quietly, like a shadow under the door. I kept brushing it off. Everyone gets bored, right? Every couple goes through dry spells. But this wasn't a phase. This was erosion. I tried. I cooked his favorite meals, asked about his day, left the bedroom door open literally and metaphorically. Nothing changed. His body was there, but his mind was always elsewhere. I began to question if it was me, if I had become boring, uninteresting, old. It's not a good feeling, wondering if your relevance expired while you were busy raising a family. Then came that evening. Just me and my son, eating frozen pizza on the couch, a movie playing in the background. He glanced at me between bites. You ever think about just doing something for yourself? Not for Dad. Not for me. Just for you? I didn't know how to answer him. I smiled, weakly, said I'd think about it. But that night, lying in bed beside a man who didn't even say goodnight, I did think about it. Really think about it. What would that look like? And why did it feel like it would be a betrayal just to imagine it? Let me know when you're ready for section 2. Of course. Here's section 2, continuing directly from where section 1 left off. It's tight, emotionally layered, and progresses the story without repeating any earlier material. Word count is 500 plus words as requested. He wasn't supposed to matter. It started as a wave across the yard. A neighbor I barely noticed before. Divorced, I think. Quiet. Always out early, jogging with a black lab and earbuds in. One morning, I dropped the garbage bin and muttered a curse under my breath. He heard me, pulled one earbud out, and said, "Rough start." That's all it took. A thread pulled. A few days later, he brought over a package that was misdelivered. Asked about my job. His name was Mark. We talked longer than we should have for a doorstep exchange. His eyes stayed on mine. Not in a creepy way. Just present. Intentional. It felt good. I told myself it was harmless. I wasn't doing anything wrong. But the truth is, I started looking for reasons to step outside. Walk the dog. Check the mailbox. Water plants that didn't need it. And more often than not, he was there. Timing or fate, I don't know.
He remembered what I said.
Noticed little things. Laughed at my sarcasm. I found myself saying things I hadn't shared with anyone in years. Not secrets, just truths. Things I used to talk about before I got swallowed up by being a wife and a mom. Mark asked what kind of music I liked, what books I read.
My husband never asked me that.
He assumed he already knew. The conversations with Mark were like tiny windows, and I kept opening them wider. There was one afternoon, nothing special, just warm light, a breeze, and a conversation about nothing. I made a dumb joke. He laughed. I laughed. And then, without thinking, I touched his arm. A reflex. Innocent. But not. That night, I avoided my husband's gaze across the dinner table. He didn't notice. He asked if we were out of ketchup. The guilt started small. A whisper. But it grew. Every message from Mark, every passing smile, felt like I was stealing something. And yet, I couldn't stop. It wasn't about Mark. It was about how I felt when I was with him.
Seen. Heard. Awake.
He never crossed a line.
Not yet.
But he looked at me like he was waiting for permission. And some part of me, one I didn't want to admit existed, was thinking about giving it. The irony was cruel. My son had told me to do something that made me happy. But he didn't know that happiness sometimes comes tangled in temptation. I started checking my reflection more, wearing lipstick again, changing shirts twice before going outside. I told myself it was for me. But deep down, I knew whose eyes I wanted on me. The space between right and wrong began to blur. And I realized, with growing unease, that I didn't feel as guilty as I should. That scared me more than anything. Let me know when you're ready for Section 3. Absolutely. Here's Section 3, written with precision and emotional depth, continuing the story without any repetition. Word count meets the 500+ requirement, and the pacing drives directly into the core act of infidelity with clarity and emotional weight. It started with a message. Just one line. You free tonight? I stared at it longer than I should have. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could have ignored it. I could have said no. Instead, I typed back. Yeah.
For a little while.
My husband had taken an overnight trip for work. First time in months. The silence at home felt different that evening, heavier, charged. I made tea, paced the kitchen, told myself I wasn't doing anything yet. But deep down, I already knew I had made the choice. Mark picked me up in his truck. No words at first. Just music low on the radio. I felt everything and nothing. My heartbeat was in my throat. He didn't reach for me. He waited. We drove out past the edges of town, past places I recognized, into the blur of unfamiliar roads. It wasn't planned. Nothing was planned. We weren't thinking. Or maybe we were thinking too much. He parked.
Turned off the engine.
We sat there, both staring forward. The silence between us wasn't awkward, it was loaded. He looked at me and asked softly, "Are you sure?" I didn't answer with words. I leaned over and kissed him. It wasn't wild or desperate. It was slow, intentional, like we both needed to prove something to ourselves. Clothes didn't come off in a hurry. It wasn't about lust, not entirely. It was the intimacy, the touch, the feeling of being wanted. His hands weren't hesitant. They were careful, focused. Like he knew I was carrying more than desire. Like he could feel the weight of all the things I hadn't said. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't cinematic. But it was real. And in those minutes, I felt awake in a way I hadn't in years. Not because of Mark. Because of what it meant. Because I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Afterward, we didn't speak much. He drove me home. No music this time.
No small talk.
Just headlights stretching down an empty road and a shared understanding that everything had changed. Back in my kitchen, the lights felt too bright. I caught my reflection in the microwave door. Hair a mess, eyes wide, lips still tingling. I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me, but she didn't look sorry. I lay in bed that night pretending to sleep. The house felt cold. I thought I'd be overwhelmed with regret, but instead, I felt numb.
The guilt was there, yes.
But it was buried under something heavier. The realization that I hadn't felt alive in so long, I had forgotten what it even meant. Morning came like any other. My son sat at the table, scrolling his phone. I poured coffee with shaky hands. He looked up at me just for a second, then looked away.
He knew something.
Maybe not what, but something. His silence said more than words could. And just like that, I became someone I never thought I'd be. Let me know when you're ready for Section 4. Here is Section 4, written with the same tight focus and emotional realism. This final act delivers the emotional fallout and quiet reckoning, staying aligned with the tone and rules of an infidelity story. Word count meets the 500+ requirement, with no repetition or filler. I didn't confess. Not out loud. Not to him. What would I even say? That I missed being seen? That one evening of feeling desired made me question my entire marriage? I couldn't form the words, so I buried them.
Deep.
Where no one would look. Days passed, and nothing on the surface changed. We still ate dinner. Still talked about bills, errands, schedules. But something underneath had shifted. My husband looked at me differently, like he sensed something had broken, even if he didn't know what. He didn't ask questions. Maybe he didn't want the answers. Or maybe he'd already stopped expecting truth from me. Mark stopped messaging. I didn't reach out either. There was nothing more to say. Whatever it was, it had happened, and now it was over. Not the impact, just the act. The guilt wasn't loud. It was quiet, constant. A pressure in the chest, a heaviness behind the eyes. I'd get through the day, smile when I had to, but the weight never left. I looked at my husband and wondered if he deserved the truth, or if protecting him from it was just another form of control. One night, after dinner, I found myself sitting in the living room with my son. Just the two of us again. He wasn't saying much. He rarely did lately. But then he looked at me and said, "You're different." I froze. Tried to laugh it off. "What do you mean?" He shrugged. "I don't know. Just different." I opened my mouth to speak, then stopped. What was I supposed to say? That I took his words too literally? That I let one night rewrite years of loyalty? The silence between us was long. He finally broke it. When I said do something that makes you happy, I didn't mean he stopped, eyes narrowing slightly. I didn't mean hurt anyone. I nodded slowly. I know. He didn't ask if I had done something. He didn't need to. He just looked disappointed, and that hurt more than any accusation ever could.
I didn't sleep that night.
I lay awake next to my husband, staring at the ceiling, wondering how life could shift so far without either person noticing. I had stepped outside of our marriage, yes, but the real betrayal had happened long before that. In the neglect. In the absence. In the years we let drift by without touching each other's hearts. The next morning, I sat across from both of them at breakfast. Husband and son. Neither said much. Neither looked at me for long. The table was full of food, but no one was really eating. There was no explosion, no screaming, no dramatic collapse. Just a quiet understanding that something was broken. And maybe it had been for a long time. I smiled, weakly, out of habit. No one smiled back. I chewed my toast slowly, wondering if they'd already forgiven me for something they didn't even know the full truth about, or if forgiveness was never coming at all. Either way, I knew I didn't deserve it.